Thank you, Pratima, for spending time for the Japan CPO Association's very first online event. Can you introduce yourself to the audience, please?
Absolutely. Nice to see you, Ken, again after so many years. My name is Pratima Arora. I have been doing product, for 15 years at this point. So I'm a builder and a maker at heart for a lot of you know. I am in a transition period on my product role. So I was running the product and the P&L for Confluence Cloud at Atlassian, who are builder of Jira, Trello, and Confluence, as you guys know them at Bitbucket. And next week, I'm actually joining a new role as a chief product officer for a blockchain trust company called Chainalysis.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you, Ken. Happy to be here.
Great, thank you very much. So you've led product organizations at Salesforce and also at Atlassian, and now you're taking on the CPO role. So how common are CPOs at software companies?
Gosh, very common now in last 5 years. I remember I started doing product back in 2006, which was 15 plus years ago. And I don't think I didn't even know what product management was. But I just for fun did a CPO Google search to see which came up, because I remember a decade ago when I did that search, procurement officer would come up or chief people officer would come up. And you'll be surprised, actually, chief product officer came up as the highest when I did a CPO search, which was a pleasant surprise. I'm like, that role is actually picking up. Most of the organizations who have been successful either have had a role, or even if they hadn't had a role, they've had somebody who has played the role in their company. So Steve Jobs used to call himself the chief product officer of Apple for a long time. And in his absence, you would Apple's journey, they talk about a generation where they were lost without that visionary, the person who was providing direction and strategically translating that for the audience too. So I think inorganically that role existed for a lot of years. Founders took over that role a lot of times, but I've seen it becoming very, very common and formalized in the last 5 to 10 years.
Great. And what sort of roles and responsibilities would you consider for a CPO?
A chief product officer role, varies in a lot of organizations. We'll talk about that in a second. But at the highest level, like if I'm looking at the highest level, I think that the biggest thing for a chief product officer's job is to provide the direction, provide that vision and the strategy that would help serve their customers and the company vision. So, there is a company mission, and then there is customers, and they are kind of providing that vision strategy, helping the company set that course. I sometimes take an example, like take a vehicle of your choice. Is it a car or a bus or a ship? If it is a ship, then, you are a CPO is the one who's helping adjust the sails as necessary to the conditions and helping business adapt as they move on. They are the ones saying, hey, we are going there. Why does it make sense to go there? What path are we going to go to get there to? And why us than somebody else, right? How are we uniquely different than all the other ships who are trying to sail in the same direction? So I think if that analogy helps you define on what are kind of the roles and responsibilities. But I want to add something to that. Sometimes people ask me, what does make a good CPO? What is like the job of a good CPO, right? And I would tell them a lot of people talk about the vision, the strategy, but it's actually 50% execution too. And it's the right balance between the vision, the strategy, the direction, and the execution that makes a good CPO, because their job is not to just put a strategy and throw it off the wall to somebody to go do it. Actually, good CPOs are actually in the weeds with developers, with marketers, with everybody to build on that vision. So I think the execution piece, and I can go in detail about what all execution comes in, are responsible. The third variant I've seen, Ken, which I actually took a role at Atlassian, was of a P&L owner or a business owner. So I was responsible for the entire profit and loss statement for Confluence Cloud. The reason was because even if it was a B2B software business, it's 85% of our revenue was coming from e-commerce. So it was like a very product-led growth company. So if you've heard that term, it's kind of the buzzword these days. How do I grow my business without big sales teams? So the head of products there owned the P&L, which is fascinating because now you have a person who's thinking about strategically when starts, at least in this case, I was driving, but if not driving, collaborating heavily, you're not building something you can't sell, and you're not selling something that you can't build. Right. And, we've all been in situations where that's happened. So I'm a big believer of this product owner being very aligned with business goals, if not driving, contributing.
Great. And so if you're steering the ship, so to speak, then you're working with, or you're in communication with the CEO, the CTO, maybe the CFO. So what sort of decisions are expected of a CPO?
So there are so many decisions that happen on day-to-day basis that we make, but I'll tell you what ownership area a CPO would own. So I think if you are in a smaller organization, and then we can scale up to a larger organization. So I would say this person would be responsible for a classic strategy doc, hey, where are we going? Why are we going there? How does a competitive landscape looks like? And what are our strategies? And when I say strategies, doesn't mean blah, blah, blah. I think what I mean is 3 things we would do differently, which nobody else can do in this market. So what is our unique, sustainable, differentiated strategy in the market that will differentiate us? What's our moat, if you have heard this term? So they work hand in hand in a smaller company, literally tied to the hip with the CEO, defining that. And a lot of times I've seen when a CPO comes on board to a company, a CEO has been doing that role. So as that transition happens, they take that over to that as CEO's roles broadens, and they have so many other things to take care on. So a lot of times you'll see a Series B or a C company bring in a CPO so that the CEO can start scaling, and then can offload some of this work to them, because once you get to that scale, you can put the vision and direction, but I think what misses is the execution piece. So now we've put the vision. Okay, you can do that, but what happens when you have to take that 10,000 feet vision and translate into what are we going to do tomorrow? What are we going to do next quarter? And what are we going to do next year, right? So one of the biggest responsibilities of a CPO, as they hire a head of product or other things, is to be able to break that down, to be able to help the team see where we are going. So a good chunk of my time is not just, putting the vision, but it's to mobilize individuals across the organization. It is to evolve our teams and their plans through, working with, if the engineering reports into you or not depends on, again, different product roles, but making sure that we are building that culture of customer-driven innovation or customer DNA, and also helping build a culture of continuous improvement. So I think a lot of times people don't realize how important that execution piece is, especially as you are evolving, as you're growing and scaling. When you and I worked at Salesforce together, I think good chunk of our job was making sure that we actually deliver what we said we would deliver. And it was done at the right time with our engineering partners. And we course adjusted as we were talking to customers and as we learned. And I would say every product manager, more so the CPO, is in tune with the customer, right? So they know on a daily basis what the customers are saying, and they're helping make that decisions if things need to stir in a different direction because of the market or the customer or technical leads are, right? So you said, hey, we talked to the CFO, we talked to the marketing, but we also talk to technology teams very closely, because some things are just not feasible or the cost of building them is so high. So how do you make those trade-offs? I think a lot of times your day is spent making those trade-offs. And that role evolves as you go in larger companies, but at a high level, it stays within those two buckets.
It's interesting that you mentioned that you speak to customers. So at Salesforce, we spoke to customers we had the Salesforce Innovation Center, and then we also spoke to customers at Dreamforce. And then as product managers, we were also very much involved in the community in terms of idea exchange and just the community in general. But how about at Atlassian or in other software companies? What sort of communication have you seen between the CPO and customers?
Yeah, and I speak this for all product managers and CPOs. Like, if you're not talking to customer, like I find every opportunity I get, I talk to customers. I'll let you know, when I first took on my head of product role at Confluence Cloud, I literally pinged 30 customers. And I said, my first week, like my onboarding week, is to talk to customers. At Chainalysis, I did not take a job till I spoke with the customer. So, just because I think we sometimes forget that customers are the most important person in the room, if they're in the room or outside the room. The biggest thing anybody should be doing is, as a CPO or product manager, is listening to customers and understanding their needs, not building what they're asking you to build, because they all often tell you a solution which doesn't solve their problem. I think going back to the principles of the 5 whys, which a lot of us like, really getting to the root of the problem and then solving that. I don't know, Ken, if you knew this, my first job was at Intuit, who makes TurboTax and QuickBooks. And I was a software engineer. So I started my career as a software engineer. And our onboarding was, we had to follow customers home. So I was a camera person as an engineer. And my first week of onboarding was, I'm in the United States. So we have a store called like Fry's. It's an electronics store. It was a shrink wrap software. It was sold on a CD. So we would go to that store, and if somebody would pick up that box with the CD, we'll ask them, hey, we'll pay for your software and give you an extra $50 if you're ready, if you're willing for us to follow you. And we would like follow them, and then we'll see them open the box and install the CD. And it was like a half, the whole thing for like 2-3 hours would last. And it just got ingrained in me so early on, because it's so different when you see your customers feeling the excitement and the pain, what works, what doesn't work. And even as an engineer was just so fascinating. And talking to customers, sometimes people say, oh, it's product's role is to talk to customers and translate it. I'm like, no. Product's job is to bring customer voice into the organization, take everybody who connect them closer, not just be the translator. So I think at a CPO level, I think your job becomes building that DNA. Like you should be responsible for building that customer DNA and the innovation DNA. Because I wish all the awesome ideas came from me, or all the awesome solutions came from me. It doesn't happen that way, right? You know it. That's why we had Innovation Center at Salesforce, and a lot of companies have it, because once you bring the real customer problems in-house, then anybody can solve those problems. And the more autonomous teams you have, the more creativity you give them, they'll solve better, faster problems. So I think it's as much as I talk to customers is how much I bring our company, individuals to customers. How do we build that customer culture within the organization as well?
Right. And then, so you actually mentioned something very interesting about sort of user research. So I guess at Intuit, it was literally right home with them type of user research. So how do you tend to work with user research organizations or UX in general?
Yeah, so in a CPO role, a lot of time design, UX, research, product, and sometimes product marketing. And in some organization, engineering will roll up to a CPO. So it depends on how the organization organic. So I'll answer that question at 2 levels, Ken. Were you asking as a CPO, or were you asking as a product manager in general?
More from the CPO sort of level.
Yeah. So I would say that there are 2 ways to think about it. Most of the time, a CPO would be responsible for research, design, product. And in my case, my new role, I'm also responsible for engineering and data. So all those 5 functions will roll up to me. because our CEO wanted one person to be responsible for the vision and the execution of it. He's like one person, one accountable person I can bang on to say, hey, this person is not going to only translate my vision and help me get there, but also execute on it. Research is such an important function in smaller organizations, and there is none. Like there's most of the times is ignored and nobody does it, and everybody is doing it on their own. I personally feel that every product manager should be talking to customers. My goal was at least six customers a week. I don't know why did I come up with that number, but it was at Salesforce. If you remember, I used to do about 6 to 10 EBCs a week.
Yeah.
And EBCs are enterprise business customer meetings where, you get pulled into having conversations. Research organization is very critical. Because a research organization gives you customer input from a very unbiased perspective. They actually are going and seeking for diverse customers in different segments with different backgrounds, just to give you a holistic view of your customer base. I think sometimes a lot of, as I encourage people, talk to customers, but take that as one input, like one signal into many signals that you get into when you're building a product, right? Talking to customer is one signal. Where the market is going is another signal. What your competition looks like is another signal. Where the new technology trends are, like, hey, if AI and VR, for example, becomes really big, I'm just going out there a bit, but that's another signal. As you think about it, and knowing that how these all signals come together, and then you have usage data from your product, which I live and die in, like, how are our customers using my product? Not just what they're telling us, but how are they using it? And then obviously the funnel and the sales data. So I think they're all signals that you get. And as a chief product officer, you look at all those signals and then you make those discussions. I find user research as one of those more sophisticated done signals. Do not think that you can do user research. Yes, you can. I think you'll get a good intuition, and you should, but it should not replace the proper research that should be done with customers, which is unbiased.
Right. Great. Thank you. Thank you for going with me on that off topic. So in terms of now, as a leadership role, CPO obviously is a leadership role. So what sort of values do you look for when you're building out a team, or as you're leading the team?
Yeah, great question. And I got a chance to rebuild team twice. So when I joined Salesforce, before even you did, I was one of the few like on the Sales Cloud, I was one of the few PMs who we just had like a very small team. I would say a handful of us. And then, when I left Salesforce, and the team had grown up to, like, Sales Cloud had 27 product managers, and a good more than half of them were hired and built by me personally over the nine years. And it was just a fun ride to build that team. And when I joined Atlassian, I had a very similar experience. Even if Confluence was about 14 years old that time, they had relocated the entire R&D team from Sydney to Mountain View in Bay Area, California. So 20 people relocated their lives, and I got one product manager, and then I had to rebuild a team of 20 when I just left. So it had been a fun, so many scars and mistakes as I think about it, and then so many learnings as I think about the team. So I'll start with my values, and then we'll go into my values as I build the team. So as one of the things that is very important to me is to be authentic. In my midlife of product, I think I struggled with authenticity. I didn't see a lot of people who were like me, who were out there, and I didn't want to be one of them. I didn't see a leader that I could say, hey, I want to be like this person. It took a while to search for my authenticity as a leader, which was very important to me. So the things that I value a lot are I'm just an honest and open person. I'm like, I don't beat around the bush. I just want, let's just have an open, intelligent, intellectually honest debate and get to the best conclusion. And that's a value that's very, very important to me. Atlassian actually had a custom company value on it, which they call it open company, no BS. And they had a swear word in it. I'm not kidding. And it just resonated so much well with me because it just served me as like, because there's no point beating around the bush or hiding things. Let's just have an open and honest conversation. Second thing was passion. Like I run on passion. It's like the blood in my veins. And when I'm looking for people passionate about the space, passionate about what they're doing, passionate about the product they're building, if product managers don't believe or CPO is not passionate about what they're building and selling, like who else? Like our head of sales would always say the product people are the best salespeople, right? You would get on a call, you would help them sell it because they're so passionate and they can go so deep and they can show the roadmap. And then last but not the least is humility. Like being kind and humble is very important to me as a leader. And that was the one I was alluding to, was very hard for you to see because sometimes you lose that. And I think what I've learned is that you can be humble and strong, and you don't need to pick one. And it's possible to do both. So I'm gonna stick with both of them. You asked, how do I think about the values when I hire the team? I think there are a few things I think about. So definitely passion and capability over experience is very important to me. So over the years, I've hired people at different levels, obviously very senior, but also like I love our associate product management program. Like I know Salesforce Atlassian had a really awesome one where we got people right out of college, super passionate, hungry to learn, high capability. And how do you get those really early people budding into this function? That's very important to me. And you asked me, what did I do? One thing I did differently is cognitive diversity. So we talk about gender diversity, race diversity, and all the other diversities, but I think what people underestimate is how important is cognitive diversity for product people. And what do I mean by cognitive diversity, or how do I find it is I don't know if you guys are familiar with, but we used to use a triangle at Atlassian. We called it the PM triangle. So I'm going to explain it to you so you'll understand it. So if this is a triangle, we're going to make it that the top is suppose the business side. So product people need business at the top. One side is the technical or analytical side. You can say, hey, and then the third part would be the designer creative side. What we've seen is in a product triangle, you can come from the business, which is you can come from technical side, or you can come from design or creative side, because there's no product school,
right?
At least that exists, right? We all came from either one of those functions, and we all are trying to gauge build our expertise in others, right? And ideally, we want to be in the center of the triangle. Mm-hmm. So when you're hiring your people, going back to cognitive diversity, is thinking about what kind of a person do you need for this role, or what kind of people do you need as a function. And you don't have a lopsided organization that you have all technical product managers, or you have all business-oriented product managers, or very just creative product managers. You like we do this exercise, we put everybody to put their dot on the triangle, say, hey, where are you right now? And we all move our dots, right? Like I came from technical side, and I learned the business skills, and picked up design, and I'm trying to be as close to the center. We'll never be close to the center. Mm-hmm. But knowing what you're good at, hiring people who are good at other functions, mm-hmm. and building a team which is very diverse in this. My 3 direct reports at Atlassian were literally all different. One had a total design background. One had these were the kind of the directors, group PMs you can see, and one had a very analytical background. One had a business background. And we just needed that. And the conversations were amazing. Mm-hmm. Like we were suddenly thinking about the full picture of a customer. We were tackling a problem from all those angles. So just being aware of where people's backgrounds are, what kind of experiences they have had. Are you hiring people of same type or the people that look like you? There's a famous saying, say, don't hire people who look and act like you, hire people who are different. And I think that's so important when you think about that. So those are some of the things I use for hiring and the values.
Great. Yeah, those are all stuff that I think I should start thinking about myself as well. as what I'm trying to grow my company. So we've kind of gone through all the questions. Do you have any like kind of sort of last sort of words of advice for companies that are sort of starting to scale and starting to grow? You mentioned a lot of companies that were starting from the Series B, Series C, but also in terms of scale, like to any of the people that are currently product managers or thinking about a career in product management?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. There are, gosh, there's so much. I'm wondering where should I start as I think about it. And so many advices, it depends what advice do I give for PMs. I always give one thing to CP, both product managers who are starting and then maybe we can come to or scaling or thinking about this, is do what you really passionate about. I'll tell you why, Ken, because we as product managers, the best product managers are who really care about the problem. And if they don't care about the problem, they would not build the best things. So if you don't care about an area, don't try to do. It's no point wasting your time and the company's time on it. Find something that you really think is a problem that you care to solve. Because at the end of the day, what product managers are doing is they're solving problems, right? We want to solve, the problem we see we're builders, we're creators, and we all are tinkerers in some ways. If the problem doesn't interest you, go find a problem that really interests you. The reason I say that, you're going to do so much better. You're going to just accelerate yourself and accelerate the company in so many different ways that you think about. And the advice I would have for chief product officers, and as I have scaled my teams from sometimes really nascent to hundreds in the R&D, and is after a while as product managers, our job is, yes, of course, it's direction, vision, execution, but it comes down to people, right? If you don't have the right people, and if you don't have the right practices for them, it won't work. You alone cannot do anything. Even as a product manager alone, you can't do anything because you need somebody to build it. And so how do you think about autonomy? How do you build autonomous teams? How do you build a culture of innovation? How are you, I would say sometimes half of my job is just, motivation and instilling and encouraging my organization to take this vision forward. Because you can't do that alone. Product CPO and product managers are the biggest influencers in the entire organization. It's a lot of leading without authority. You mobilize teams, you're motivating teams. So as I scale, I'll tell you some of the biggest things I learned was, how do I build motivated, empowered, autonomous, accountable, those are the right words, teams who are innovating on a daily basis. And so many tips and tricks there, but that becomes the most important role at the end of the day of a CPO, is to get that multiplier effect from everybody around us.
Great. Pratima, thank you so much for your time and for all of your wisdom and sharing your knowledge. This has been great for me personally as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ken. And thanks for having me, and good luck with everything.